Building a permanent structure in a humid, tropical environment demands careful site selection. Before any wood is cut, the ground itself must be prepared. Clearing organic debris prevents premature rot, while establishing a level baseline is the first critical step for a raised foundation. The forest dictates the terms. Driving a metal rod through rocky soil breaks up the compacted earth without widening the hole unnecessarily. A tight post hole provides immediate lateral stability, but sinking raw bamboo directly into damp soil guarantees decay. To solve this, irregular river stones are dropped into the base of each footing. This stone layer acts as a critical capillary break. It elevates the end grain of the timber above the wet dirt, allowing ground moisture to drain away rather than wicking up into the structural columns. A dry foundation means decades of durability. Rather than relying on metal hardware, the primary load-bearing joints are secured with carved wooden pegs. Bamboo is incredibly strong under compression, but it can split if forced together with standard iron nails. Driving a tapered wooden peg through precision-drilled holes creates a mechanical lock that actually tightens over time. As the green bamboo cures and shrinks, it clamps down on the dry wooden peg. This traditional friction-fit joinery allows the entire frame to flex slightly under high winds without snapping. Reaching the upper canopy requires shifting the assembly sequence. The top horizontal beams must tie the vertical posts together before the roof load is applied. Each high elevation connection relies on the same pinned mortise technique, locking the upper perimeter into a rigid box. Without this upper bracing, the weight of a heavy thatched roof would push the vertical columns outward. Kneeling directly on the upper framework tests the integrity of those newly pegged joints. The steep pitch being formed will be essential for shedding torrential seasonal rain, directing water quickly away from the living space below. With the roof frame secure, attention shifts to the decking. Splitting green bamboo lengthwise exposes the softer interior pith while preserving the incredibly tough outer silica skin. This dense outer layer naturally resists impact, moisture, and insect damage, making it an ideal flooring material. Laying these flexible split strips, convex side up, creates a breathable, slatted platform. The slight curvature of each piece allows air to circulate up from underneath, which helps cool the structure during humid afternoons. Pinning each strip flush against the next transforms raw, round timber into a comfortable, flat walking surface. Above the decking, a woven roof lattice takes shape. Thin, highly flexible bamboo strips are interlaced across the heavier rafters. Weaving the timber under and over creates a tensioned membrane rather than just a rigid grid. This interlaced pattern distributes the eventual weight of the roofing material evenly across all the underlying beams, preventing localized sagging. Securing these thin strips with flexible lashings instead of rigid nails ensures that the roof can expand and contract with the daily temperature shifts without popping loose. The basket-like structure is complete. The final protective layer relies on the broad surface area of gathered palm leaves. Thatching is an exercise in extreme redundancy. By overlapping the heavy fronds from the bottom edge upward, every leaf covers the seam of the one below it. This staggered arrangement acts like a natural shingle system, utilizing gravity to pull rainwater swiftly down the pitched incline before it can penetrate the layers. Working horizontally across the lattice, each frond is lashed tightly to the woven grid below, locking it against the lifting force of high winds. The density of this organic canopy provides total shade, while the porous nature of dried leaves allows trapped, hot air to escape upward. Trimming the overhanging edges with a sharp blade leaves a clean drip line, ensuring runoff falls well clear of the wooden floor below. To enclose the platform, a perimeter railing system is introduced. Boring clean holes through the horizontal supports prevents the hollow bamboo from splitting under stress. Rather than building the railing piece by piece in place, small ladder-like sections are pre-assembled on the flat deck. This modular approach guarantees that the vertical spindles remain parallel and plumb. Driving wooden pegs into the pre-drilled joints locks the rigid panels together. Once slotted into the main frame, these railing sections instantly define the boundaries of the space, turning a simple open platform into a protected room. The finer details elevate the structure from a basic shelter to considered architecture. Trimming the ends of the railing segments at a steep angle isn't purely decorative. While it creates a striking geometric pattern, the angled cut also exposes less of the porous inner grain to the rain. Water hits the slanted edge and immediately runs off, rather than pooling on a flat, horizontal surface where rot typically begins. Form follows survival. The final wooden pegs are hammered home, permanently locking the decorative railing into the primary columns. This perimeter fence does more than provide visual enclosure. It acts as a massive structural cross brace for the lower half of the gazebo. By tying the vertical posts together with stiff, geometric panels, the railing drastically increases the shear strength of the entire building. If a strong storm hits, the frame will resist twisting forces. Looking out from within, the completed structure now feels secure and isolated, sitting quietly beneath its dense, waterproof canopy in the humid forest. Moving down to the dirt, the focus shifts to protecting the immediate perimeter. Smooth, dark river stones are hauled in and sorted by weight and flat surface area. Laying a dense, heavy stone ring directly against the base of the bamboo columns creates a robust retaining wall. Over time, the massive amount of water shedding off the steep palm roof will carve deep trenches into unprotected soil. This heavy stone armor absorbs the kinetic impact of falling water, preventing the earth from washing away during heavy downpours. It anchors the soil, stabilizing the ground that supports the entire structure. Furthermore, the dark stones act as a thermal battery. As they bake in the filtered sunlight, they absorb heat, drying out the muddy soil around the foundation much faster than raw dirt ever could. Working stone by stone requires a careful eye for interlocking shapes, ensuring that no single rock can be easily dislodged by a stray footstep or a shifting current of water. The boundary between architecture and landscape begins to blur. To conquer the muddy approach, a permanent pathway is carved into the earth. Scraping away the loose, organic topsoil exposes the harder, compacted clay beneath. This provides a stable, unyielding base for the heavy walkway. Large, flat-topped rocks are selected and pressed deeply into the wet earth. Spacing them apart allows the surrounding soil to lock the edges of each stone into place as it dries and hardens. Without this stone path, daily foot traffic would quickly churn the wet perimeter into a deep, slippery trench, tracking mud directly onto the clean bamboo floors. Weeding the immediate borders prevents aggressive root systems from lifting or shifting the stones out of alignment over the coming months. Embedding the hard river rock flush with the ground level means the walkway functions like a natural extension of the terrain, offering safe, dry footing regardless of the weather. The heavy lifting pays off in year-round accessibility. The final treatment for the gazebo is an application of vibrant, weather-resistant paint. Bare, green bamboo looks natural, but it rapidly degrades under intense ultraviolet light and constant humidity. Brushing a thick, oil-based coating over the raw Xed seals the microscopic pores in the silica skin. This prevents moisture from seeping into the vulnerable inner fibers where fungal rot typically sets in. Working the pigment into the intricate lattice is tedious, but it acts as a crucial barrier against wood-boring insects. The bright yellow color isn't just an aesthetic choice. Light, reflective pigments absorbs significantly less thermal heat than darker stains, keeping the wooden frame cooler and reducing the chance of the bamboo splitting from thermal expansion. Coating every exposed joint and peg blocks out the dampness of the surrounding forest. The bold finish ensures the structure will stand for years. resilient against the punishing jungle climate. Expanding the homestead requires bridging the water crossing. For a load-bearing bridge, older, thicker bamboo shoots are harvested from the dense groves. These mature stalks have denser cell walls, offering the sheer compressive strength needed to support human weight suspended over a gap. Scraping the sharp, protruding branch nodes off the exterior creates a smoother surface, preventing injury during the heavy lifting ahead. Carrying these massive, water-laden poles through the muddy terrain is brutal work, but sourcing the timber on site is the only practical way to build at this scale. A bridge over moving water cannot simply rest on the muddy banks. It needs anchored piers. Standing directly in the flow of the stream, a specialized foundation cage begins to take shape, carving precise, square mortise holes into the thickest vertical poles is a critical structural decision. Square joints resist twisting far better than round ones, ensuring the heavy frame won't torque or collapse under the constant lateral pressure of the flowing current. Assembling the skeletal cage in the water eliminates the impossible task of dragging a heavy finished frame down the steep embankment. By interlocking the horizontal beams deeply into the vertical posts, the structure becomes an incredibly rigid box. This open framework design allows the water to pass directly through it, radically reducing the hydrodynamic drag that would otherwise wash a solid wall downstream. The sheer weight of the timber helps sink the vertical legs into the soft riverbed, establishing a temporary foothold. The cage is level, but it is currently too light to support a bridge deck. To anchor the lightweight bamboo against the rushing current, the empty cage must be transformed into a massive weight. Dropping dense, smooth river stones into the wooden matrix creates a primitive but highly effective gabion wall. Because bamboo is naturally hollow and extremely buoyant, it naturally wants to float away. The heavy rock ballast completely neutralizes that buoyancy, pinning the structure firmly into the mud. Packing the stones tightly ensures that smaller debris won't wash through and compromise the internal support. This rock-filled cage now functions as an immovable pier capable of bearing the immense downward load of the upcoming bridge span while letting the stream flow effortlessly around it. The turbulent water itself is used as an excavation tool. Directing a concentrated flow against the base of the bamboo poles accelerates the erosion of the muddy stream bed, scouring a deeper trench for the legs to settle into. With the ground softened, driving the vertical posts deeper, with a heavy wooden mallet locks them into the dense clay below. This acts as a friction pile, increasing the structural resistance against lateral river currents. Dropping the final massive capstones into the frame applies constant downward compression, locking the interlocking bamboo joints tightly together. The completed pier is now an extension of the rocky stream bed, unshakable and ready to carry a heavy load across the water. With twin rock-filled piers established on either side of the crossing, the massive structural stringers can finally be positioned. These exceptionally long, thick bamboo poles form the backbone of the bridge. Pushing them parallel across the gap is physically demanding, but it takes advantage of bamboo's legendary tensile strength. Spanning a wide distance without midpoint supports means the stringers will be subjected to intense bending forces. By laying multiple poles side by side, the load is distributed across several separate axes, preventing a catastrophic failure if one beam cracks under tension. The heavy, rock-filled bases provide a solid landing pad, elevating the timber well above the high water line. This clearance is vital to ensure the wood stays dry and avoids rotting from constant exposure to the flowing current. Adjusting the heavy poles in the rushing water requires careful balance, aligning them perfectly to create a level, unyielding foundation for the walking surface. The spine of the bridge is set. Now that the heavy stringers are spanning the stream, the decking transforms them into a functional walkway. Securing dozens of thin, flat wooden planks across the cylindrical bamboo creates a stable, high-friction tread. Hammering iron nails directly into the dense bamboo skin requires sharp precision to avoid splitting the timber. Nailing the planks horizontally does more than provide a place to step. It actively ties the parallel stringers together. This prevents the long poles from rolling or shifting independently under the uneven weight of human footsteps. Working on hands and knees across the suspended span ensures every gap is tightly managed, preventing tripping hazards. The densely packed deck distributes the impact of a footfall across multiple underlying beams simultaneously. Driving the final nails home locks the last section of the walkway into place. A bridge is only as reliable as its weakest connection, so checking the alignment of every single plank is mandatory before trusting the span. Adjusting the overhanging edges ensures a clean, uniform perimeter that won't catch on passing loads. From underneath, the structural logic of the crossing is entirely exposed. The thick, parallel stringers carry the immense downward force directly onto the massive rock piers, while the horizontal planks act as a continuous, stiffening web across the top. The bridge must endure extreme humidity and the constant threat of seasonal flooding, but its heavy, open architecture design is built to shrug off the harsh conditions. A solid crossing turns two divided riverbanks into a single connected homestead. A narrow span over a rocky stream bed demands a sturdy safety barrier. Rather than just lashing poles together with twine, the builder utilizes deep, circular mortise holes cut directly into the vertical support posts, sliding the horizontal railing deep inside these cavities. Creates a massively strong connection that cannot be easily pushed outward by a stumbling pedestrian. Driving a heavy metal nail through the top of the joint pins, the horizontal rail permanently, ensuring it will never slide out of its socket under vibration or heavy impact. Clearing away the loose rocks around the base of the uprights allows them to be seated firmly against solid ground, increasing lateral stability. The intricate, interlocking bamboo framework forms a rigid, triangulated guardrail along the sheer drop. With the basin fully excavated, the challenge is keeping the water from draining back into the porous soil. A heavy, synthetic blue tarp provides a completely impermeable barrier against the dirt. However, raw plastic breaks down rapidly when exposed to direct sunlight, and it looks aggressively unnatural in a forest setting. To solve both issues, hundreds of heavy, wet river stones are hauled in and systematically dumped onto the fragile liner. Arranging the stones by hand from the center outward creates a massive interlocking armor that shields the tarp from damaging ultraviolet rays and sharp falling debris. Stepping carefully on the rocks ensures the heavy foot traffic doesn't puncture the waterproof membrane underneath. Building a steep, stacked stone wall up the sloped sides of the pit effectively hides the artificial liner, disguising a massive plastic basin as a natural rocky depression. The heavy masonry relies solely on gravity and friction to maintain its shape, requiring zero cement or mortar to hold the edges firm. The upper perimeter requires the largest, most stable rocks to act as a definitive capstone border. Setting these heavy, flat stones firmly against the upper rim anchors the tarp securely, preventing the edges from slipping downward under the weight of the water. A solid ring also prevents loose dirt from washing back into the clean basin during heavy rains. With the primary retaining wall built, shoveling small, fine gravel across the expansive bottom fills the remaining gaps between the larger boulders. This gravel layer isn't merely decorative. It provides crucial surface area for beneficial bacteria to colonize. Once the pond is filled, these microorganisms will thrive in the pebble substrate, naturally filtering the water and breaking down organic waste. Covering every exposed inch of the bright blue plastic completes the illusion. The artificial excavation has been completely transformed into what appears to be a natural, spring-fed waterbed, ready to be brought to life. Tucking the excess plastic cleanly under the final border stems ensures the liner won't fray or tear in the wind. Trapping the edge beneath heavy rock guarantees the seal remains watertight without the need for toxic glues or sealants near a future wildlife habitat. With the structural work complete, the system is finally tested with water. As the basin fills, the incredible weight of the water itself actively pushes the plastic liner tight against the earthen walls, smoothing out wrinkles and locking the entire stone matrix into place. The pressure equalizes the structure. Directing the hose over the rocky edge aerates the incoming flow, dissolving oxygen into the water, which is crucial for preventing stagnation. Watching the water level rise confirms the steep stone walls are holding firm under the immense hydraulic pressure. The dark rocks and gravel absorb the sunlight, giving the deep water a rich, natural clarity that reflects the surrounding canopy perfectly. A massive volume of water has been permanently captured and controlled. Introducing Live Fish does more than add vibrant color. It establishes a functioning biological cycle. A standing body of water in the tropics quickly becomes a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Hungry goldfish serve as a highly effective, natural pest control system, actively feeding on insect larvae before they can hatch. Cupping the fish gently allows them to acclimate to the pond's temperature slowly, avoiding thermal shock as they enter their permanent home. And with the landscaping complete, focus shifts to heavy furniture. Rather than relying on fragile metal screws to hold thick timber, deep dowel holes are bored directly into the dense wood. Driving a thick wooden pin into these sockets creates an incredibly robust joint. When the heavy seat is pressed onto the base, the friction fit assembly will support massive weight without wobbling. A massive, discarded stump provides raw material for a monolithic table. Carving away the rough outer branches with a chainsaw aggressively defines the primary shape, shedding hundreds of pounds of unnecessary weight. Peeling the thick, protective bark with a sharp blade is mandatory. If left intact, bark traps destructive moisture against the sapwood and acts as a hidden sanctuary for wood-boring beetles that would eventually destroy the furniture. Hours of carving yield deep, fluid textures. Before any sealant can bond properly, every trace of fine sawdust must be aggressively brushed out of the deep crevices. Otherwise, the finish will turn cloudy and weak. Applying a clear penetrating oil immediately deepens the natural color, hydrating the dry fibers and highlighting the dramatic contrast in the wood grain. To create a level seating surface on the smaller log stools, the rough, uneven end grain is leveled using a sharp chisel, slicing away the high spots. Running a high-speed rotary sander across the leveled top erases the harsh tool marks, polishing the porous end grain until it is perfectly smooth and ready to accept the heavy protective varnish. The final layer of defense is a thick, amber-colored varnish. Heavy timber furniture placed in an open-air porch will be subjected to intense humidity and frequent spills. Brushing a heavy coat of oil-based polyurethane over the smoothed timber essentially encapsulates the wood in a hardened plastic shell. The varnish sinks into the microscopic pores of the end grain, curing into a dense, waterproof barrier that prevents the raw timber from absorbing moisture and expanding. Working the glossy finish over the intricate curves of the long bench highlights the fluid, organic shapes carved earlier. The thick liquid levels itself as it dries, creating a highly reflective, glass-like surface that makes wiping away dirt effortless. Coating the sides and edges ensures total protection, locking out the relentless jungle dampness. As the amber finish cures in the afternoon sun, the dull, pale wood is completely transformed into a rich, saturated centerpiece. A properly sealed stump can easily outlast the builder. Moving the fully cured furniture onto the bamboo deck requires serious leverage. The sheer mass of the polished stump table ensures it will never blow over in a severe storm. Arranging the 4 heavy log stools around the central table anchors the open porch space, providing a permanent communal focal point. Sitting back with a cold drink, the contrast is clear. Highly refined, glossy woodworking resting comfortably on a rustic, woven floor. small decorative touches require a shift to finer carpentry. Using a handsaw allows for controlled, precision cuts that a heavy chainsaw would simply destroy. Sanding the rough-sawn planks with an angle grinder quickly removes splinters, preparing the surface for a smooth finish. To build a diamond pattern lattice that remains perfectly flat, the intersecting boards must be joined using a half-lap technique. By cutting a notch halfway through the thickness of both intersecting planks, they slide together flush, creating a cross brace that is exceptionally rigid but only 1 board thick. Driving an iron nail directly through the center of the lap joint permanently locks the geometry in place. This lightweight rigid frame will serve as a strong mounting point for heavy planters, bringing color up off the ground and onto the vertical walls. Mounting the wooden shelving against the painted yellow wall requires anchoring the screws firmly into the solid structural studs, not just the thin paneling. The heavy, wet soil inside the potted plants exerts constant downward leverage, so a secure mechanical connection is critical. Elevating bright purple flowers onto the wall breaks up the flat wooden expanse, utilizing vertical space to bring life directly into the living area. The interior is beginning to feel lived in. The rewards of a working farmstead are literal. Scoring the thick skin of a whole fish with deep diagonal cuts before dropping it into a searing metal wok isn't about presentation. The deep slits allow the boiling oil to penetrate the thickest part of the meat rapidly, ensuring the fish cooks evenly and crisply before the outer skin burns. Serving the hot harvest on the polished wooden table validates the entire project. It is a place that provides. To protect the perimeter along the riverbank, a long bamboo fence is erected. Precision is required to maintain a straight, level top line across uneven terrain. Using a power drill equipped with a wide hole saw attachment guarantees a perfectly round cavity in the green bamboo. A clean cut prevents the brittle fibers from splintering outward, sinking these heavy vertical posts deep into the soil along a stretched string line ensures the entire wall will remain perfectly straight over its long run. The horizontal rails are then slid completely through the drilled cavities. The rail entirely through the center of the post, rather than just nailing it to the outside, creates an incredibly robust, integrated joint that can withstand strong impacts from animals or high winds. Digging deep, tight post holes into the dense soil along the water's edge prevents the heavy structure from sagging toward the river. Driving wooden stakes into the ground provides temporary bracing, holding the tall columns perfectly plumb while the remaining rails are threaded into place. The boundary line is formally drawn. trimming the excess length off the heavy rails with a sharp machete leaves a clean, blunt edge. With the skeletal framework standing strong, the focus shifts to creating a visual barrier. Hundreds of thin, split bamboo slats are nailed vertically to the horizontal rails. Using narrow, split strips instead of whole round poles saves immense weight while still providing total privacy. Hammering an iron nail directly through the dense outer skin of the bamboo requires a heavy, decisive strike. A weak tap will simply bend the nail or bounce off the rigid silica. Nailing the slats tightly against each other creates a solid, impenetrable wall that blocks the wind and hides the property line. Working methodically down the long run of the fence, the repetitive rhythm of the hammer drives the project toward completion. The dense vertical slats lock the parallel rails firmly together, transferring any impact force across dozens of separate wooden joints. What was once an open, vulnerable riverbank has been completely secured behind a massive, rigid bamboo shield. The final stage of preservation is highly visual. Stirring thick, oil-based paint ensures the heavy pigments are properly suspended, delivering a solid, opaque coat. Bare bamboo absorbs moisture rapidly, especially this close to the flowing river where morning fog is constant, brushing a heavy layer of vibrant yellow and red paint over the porous stalks. Completely seals the grain, preventing fungal rot and cracking. Alternating bright, saturated colors creates a striking visual rhythm that contrasts sharply against the deep, muted greens of the surrounding forest. The thick paint acts as a sacrificial layer against the harsh sun, prolonging the life of the timber beneath. Kneeling in the dirt, finishing the final few poles, the scale of the transformation becomes apparent. A raw, tangled patch of muddy riverbank has been methodically tamed and sculpted by hand. In the end, structure, landscape, and daily routine operate as one system, a place that produces, protects, and sustains itself. The quiet farmstead stands complete,